Have you read the 9/11 Commission report? Did you see him in there anywhere, his testimony? No. He's a footnote.
And as I'm sitting there, it's like, this is like the dumbest waste of time, because this was technically the second hearing they had on aviation security, and yet they get a bunch of politicians and bureaucrats talking about how bad they felt about the victims and all this other kind of junk. I just threw my written statement away. It was already part of the record, you know. But I just threw it away in ad-lib. But I couldn't stand it anymore, and I just kind of let it all hang out with them. And as a result, none of my testimony is in their report.
I submitted a lot of questions. But the main one I wanted to answer was on the record. Did you, Jane Garvey, head of the FAA, know that the cockpits were vulnerable? And if so, what did you do about it? Garvey, like a little schoolgirl, oh, I know the answer to that. And I thought, this is going to be great. She said, yes, Commissioner, we did know about that long before I got to the FAA, which is exactly the time frame we were talking about. But I think we didn't do anything about it because of cockpit decompression issues. She's so damn stupid, she thinks it's got something to do with cockpit decompression issues. If that were the case, she'd just drill a couple damn holes, lock the door, or tie the door shut. The FAA knew and knew damn well of the vulnerabilities in aviation security across the board and did absolutely nothing. As Bodgen pointed out, they also knew the threats and did absolutely nothing.
I was in the Air Marshal program from the late 80s to the mid, until I became a team leader in the Red Team. And we were such a small force. When I was a team leader, we had 50 people. But it was as early as 92 or 93 when management and FAA security was formally notified of the need to harden the cockpit doors.
Who's the idiot head of TSA? Hawley. He got on TV recently and said, well, we're going to put profilers out in front of the checkpoints to look for suspicious people. And we're going to make it more difficult for the terrorists. We're going to do things a little differently. You'll never know what's going to happen to you. Well, because they're so stupid and they leave everything so you can see it, it doesn't matter whether they change things up or not. If I can sit there, or Muhammad Ali's brother waiting to fly into the Sears Tower, same thing for the ramp. Just go watch ramps for a while. They're nice about leaving everything open. You can take binoculars and you pick combinations up off the doors on the outside stairs going into the jetways, because I've done it. Why have your name in a list? Why go show your ID and your boarding pass? Why take off your stupid shoes or have machines get you?
On my very first week of training in basic Air Marshal school, the manager showed up, and she's trying to give us a pep talk on, you know, to work out hard and, you know, in physical fitness and shooting and academics and stuff like this. And I started busting up laughing in the class. This lady must have been close to 100 pounds overweight, and she has the nerve to stand in front of us telling us to work out hard. And one of our physical fitness standards is we had to bench press our body weight. And I was thinking to myself, which is why I busted up laughing, was not only could she not bench press her body weight, there weren't too many of us that could bench press her body weight. So what hit me is that there's something wrong with leadership here. You know, not that they have to be, you know, Rambo or something like this, but at least, you know, demonstrate some leadership in front of the troops. The Red Team was designed to replicate the tactics and equipment that terrorists would use. What we did in 1996 was we put bombs on the plane in Frankfurt, looked like a real explosive, and it smelled like a real explosive. It just didn't go boom. You don't just, like, on one day put like 10 bombs through the system and see what happens. We had mules that we sent over from the United States that did the dirty work as the passengers. And I was actually disguised, if you want to call that, working in the baggage makeup area. My job was to find the bag and see what happened when it went through their bomb detection equipment. Anyway, if I remember right, we did 11 tests over the course of like a month and a half, and they missed every single one. Cathal Flynn, who was in charge of FAA security, he sent a letter to the German authorities and the U.S. air carriers over there. He gave them a warning saying, we're terminating the testing, but in a few months we're going to start it up again. We literally would have blown up 33 planes, even with the warning that they had that we were doing this. And at that point, they terminated the testing because it wasn't worth spending money with a 100% failure rate.
Mark Randall? Mark Randall was in the Red Team with us. Mark Randall got thrown out about every organization in in the FAA. The reason I went to work with Bogdan in San Francisco on the CTX testing from Atlanta is because Mark Randall was so bad, so jumpy, so obvious that he got arrested by the police and they had to get the special police we were working with to get him out. The airline refused to work with him, so we traded place. He was thrown out of ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, up in Montreal. He was thrown out of FAA Europe in Brussels. The TSA hired him and made him a federal security director at Missoula. People went berserk out there.
Prior to that, he was in charge of FAA security at Dulles.
That's right. And he's now at the Department of Homeland Security. Jane Garvey, head of FAA security. She went up to the Democratic National Convention, I think it was in 2004, to be a security consultant. Catherine Flynn, who should have been executed for treason, is a security consultant for LAX, Los Angeles. He's on a retainer, I've understood, for TSA as security consultant. So all these people have been allowed to prosper, they've got rewards, they've been promoted, they did stuff before 9/11, they were promoted, and this goes across the board. FBI, Customs, all of them. They all throw them into a new organization. What's their incentive to change?
I still work at TSA headquarters. The sense of urgency is, you could go to the mall, to a shoe store, and find a greater sense of urgency about terrorism than you get at TSA headquarters. I remember when I was doing testing in the late 90s and early 2000, 2001 timeframe, we actually had some really good people on the red team. When we were doing testing, I remember, particularly in South America, we'd submit a bomb through the system, but in order to make sure that there's not an overreaction by some fluke if they happen to find this device, we followed the suitcase wherever it went. And here we're watching, families get on the plane, and little kids and old people and everything else,
And bombs.
and bombs. And we're just thinking, like, but for the grace of God, this is a joke that we're doing here. You do that once or twice, and it's like, maybe it's just a fluke. But you do this 100 times, and they miss 99 of them. It's like, we got a serious problem here.